let's kind of get into your story and take us through what brings you here today and where God has brought you from.
Yeah, so really, I grew up out in, I was actually born in Louisiana. Not a lot of people know about that, but I was born in Louisiana, right near Baton Rouge. Got the great food out there. Soul food was like crazy, right?
Yes.
But but I was, just really young when I was out there. My dad and mom, they were both in full-time ministry, both pastors. They're children's pastors and mission pastors, actually. And so, me, my little brother, and my sister, we were raised in Louisiana, moved to Texas. And then from Texas, because of my dad, he left the full-time ministry, went right into business. So we were moving quite a lot. And then from Texas, we moved to California.
That's a big change.
Very big change, weather, everything, right? But we went straight to California, and I went right into a different school, different, place. And, for me, since I was very young, I've had alopecia. It's an autoimmune disorder where your hair follicles are attacked by your immune system. And a very small percentage of people get this, and a lot of doctors don't even know why it happens. And so when it happened to me, there's a lot of questions. I was bullied a lot in school, and then the moving around a lot didn't help at all.
Because you're always a new kid?
You're always a new kid. You got to be introduced to the whole class. And, the teachers thought it would be a good idea to just tell everybody off the back, hey, this guy has alopecia. So if you have any questions, you can bring them up to him. But they would always try and help me out a little bit.
Yeah.
But I would get in a lot of fights at school, man. And I would always say I'm defending myself. I was just a troubled kid. And, I'd be brought in the principal's office, all this kind of stuff. But we moved in that period from probably about to elementary school, to middle school, to high school, probably about 18 times. A lot of times. And my mom would always say it was because a lot of the relationships my dad had, they didn't go too well. When I was young, we were in the church. My dad was a pastor. And seeing my dad be a pastor is the most inspiring thing to me ever. And even that my mom and my dad had like a really great relationship. We'd go on mission trips, with my whole family. And so that was like really inspiring to me, seeing my dad in that level of leadership. And from there, I didn't know that I was called to be a pastor, but I knew that it was always around me, the pastoral leadership, whether it was in the home or whether it was in the church or on the mission field. But either way, I saw the power of God at a young age. And growing up, in California, there's not a lot of that around.
No, there isn't. Unfortunately not.
It's usually a lot more in the Bible Belt area.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
But it was great, being in a family that knew God.
Yes.
And that had some foundational values that were biblical. That was very helpful, So I think I was, very blessed growing up, even though I had to deal with alopecia and the questions and the looks and the bullying and the stares and all those things. I still had a pretty strong biblical foundation that I was growing up out of. But I would definitely say, growing up in California, getting older, I really began to focus on, I was like, what's my purpose?
Yeah.
What am I here for? I grew up in church. I knew it was good to go to church. I knew it was good to lift my hands in worship. I was singing on the worship team. I knew it was good to sing and to do things for God, but I didn't know that it was godly.
Yeah.
I didn't know that it was righteous. I didn't know that it was a lifestyle that I needed to commit to. And I think it's funny because I know that you'd shared that you'd grown up in church before. We were talking before.
Yeah.
It's funny because you're around everyone making the commitment, but sometimes it's like you're not personally making that commitment every day.
So true.
And a lot of times to make a commitment, it takes a sacrifice.
100%.
And I didn't have nothing to sacrifice but my little room with like my game system and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I was like, and I didn't have much that I could sacrifice. If I could sacrifice the homework, I would have done that.
Yeah,
right?
there you go. We all would have. Yeah.
We all would have sacrificed. But, the biggest thing I think for me that I had to sacrifice was how I seen the condition that I had since I was young. And just understanding, my mom would tell me all the time, God has a plan for you.
Yeah.
God has a plan for you. This isn't a part of God's doing. You didn't receive this from God. What you have to understand is that God's going to use it.
But that's a huge understanding to get, because the first thing people will do is blame God or accuse God.
For sure.
So for you, having that understanding from an early age, that sets you up from a much different trajectory than other people that would go through the condition.
Oh yeah, definitely. So I would definitely say, growing up in a Christian household was very helpful for me, regardless of the moving, regardless of the condition, because I had a great support system. You know, my brother and sister are super supportive. My brother's so funny. He'd try and fight everybody that would try and come against me and fight me. But, you know, I think like I was very blessed, you know, and I would lose that perspective if I focused on what I didn't have.
Yeah.
And so at very young, you know, I just began to really trust God. And I didn't trust him yet with my whole life, but I trusted him at some capacity.
Yeah.
And I think what was important about that is once I got into the teenage years, I was around 13, 14. My dad seen that I was musical. And my dad actually, just to add some backstory, my dad actually traveled and did Christian rap.
Wow.
Yeah. So there was a time when he actually exchanged mixtapes, he told me, with Toby Mac on a flight.
Wow, that's
which
interesting.
is pretty cool.
So that would have been back when it was DC Talk.
Back when it was that's exactly when.
Yeah.
His band was called Full Effect.
Okay.
So it was him and his buddy in ministry, and they would just travel. They went to Europe and all these different places. He was the rapper in the band.
Wow.
So my dad would always rap. So I'd be over back in my mom and dad's Land Rover, just in the back with a little headset plug in, and I had his little tape, and it was just me in the back silent.
Yeah.
And my parents probably thought I was like the best behaved kid, but I just loved his music. So I was always silent, and my brother and sister are fighting in the front. I'm just rapping his lines,
cool. That's
learning. And so I was always inspired.
So you had that generational background in ministry and in music coming from your dad.
Oh, for sure.
And so when did you really start expressing yourself in music, you know, doing it for yourself?
I remember there was a talent show, and I write about it in my book, but it was one of the first moments that I wanted to show everyone what I could do. And I was always counted out, right, because of the alopecia stuff. So I never really did that. That was big for me. Like, I was not good at sports. I was horrible at sports. So when I did music, it was like, this is what I love to do. And so I got on stage and I did one of my dad's raps.
Okay.
It actually went something like this. He said this. He said, "Shine, shine, shine, drop a rhyme. Time after time and line after line, I'm speaking my mind to the world at large. I make a weak man strong and a soft man hard. He's coming back quick, so you better get ready. Everything's gonna shake, so you better stay steady." So what he was saying was truth. And as he was saying that truth, it inspired me to go out and do the same thing.
Yeah.
And so he was very evangelistic. And I kind of, even looking back at it now, like, is a way of preaching.
Yes.
You know?
100%.
And now being a pastor is crazy, bro. God totally surprised me with this. But I got on that stage, I rapped, the crowd went crazy. It was like a crowd of kids and like some teachers and stuff, but it was so cool because those were the same kids that were like mocking me, making fun of me, but then they're right there, and because of Jesus and what he had done through my dad, and then what he's doing through me right there, and me just following what he was asking me. I felt like it was God asking me to go do that talent show.
Yeah.
I was able to get the gospel out to all these kids, and they were excited about it.
Wow.
So I was seeing like different routes that you could share the gospel already at I was like 13 at that age.
Wow.
It's crazy.
So then where did that take you in your musical journey, and how did you progress with that?
So from there, my dad just got inspired. I seen it. Like, he bought me a whole studio. It was like, man, thousands of dollars.
So he saw the talent.
Yes. And he started investing. We were very well off financially at that time. So we had like a house and everything in Rancho Cucamonga, actually, which was great. And so, you know, he invested in me, and we spent hours. I remember hours, like late at night, trying to write raps. He was writing raps with me. And then we wrote a whole album together. And we put that out, sold it, and used the money to go to Panama, Ecuador, Guatemala, and go and reach people with that music.
Fantastic.
Which was really cool. So I just seen a major investment from my dad, and he inspired me. When he did that, I was like, whoa, okay, cool. So this is our thing, you know?